Hi, welcome back! If Virgo measured, Libra chooses. Today we'll gain awareness about the most Saturnian sign, Libra. Sign of awareness of fears, other people, and beauty. Libra, as the sign of counterpart, actually starts with Venus as its first domicile. The Venus of beauty and harmony, but of health too, of course. The silent Mars tells us that this sign prefers to avoid fighting and instead uses compromise to dance harmonically with the other. And when it fights, much of how martial arts are structured, it is preferred to exhaust the enemy based on awareness of the enemy movement, judo, that sort of stuff, in order to place like one singular decisive attack and stop them. Also, it prefers politeness and formalities to being raw and fighting directly. Because Venus, this Venus domicile, you see here, favors an action, it favors harmony. We start with an harmony, we input an harmony, a stagnation. The Mars Exile disfavors any action, any aggressivity of sorts. But the essence of this sign is its Saturnian exaltation here. The core essence is that Saturn, because the Saturn provides this sign its typical legalistic nature. And even Venus to an extent, because Venus regards personal ethics, common sense, and social conventions, which sometimes in certain tribes and all societies have value of law, Saturn being fueled by the transparency of deception here, and the Exile of Epsilon tells us two things. First, that it's the collapse of identity happens when dealing with the other. So when we're dealing with an alien force, with another not us, not me thing, the identity collapses. And second of all, the vague and endless nature of, this is more of a Neptune aspect, the vague and endless nature of all those laws, which is not bureaucracy, because bureaucracy is Virgo, but this is the very long selection that happens of those Venusian values, the social conventions, that after a long trial might become law. And Saturn is the law in that sense, the constraint. So the fall of the sun, you see the sun that falls, kills this sign ego. This sign has no ego. To the point of killing almost completely the verbal auto-referentiality and sense of being that, Aries has. So like the I am is just gone. It's usually we are, or more impersonal. A lot of things, I think I see a lot with Libra is that they talk in a very impersonal way. Like Libra kills the auto-referentiality. And this is also actually the formally and actual coldest sign of the zodiac. This is the least intensive of all the signs. This is the most cold-blooded one. Earth's second domicile in the sign is the solidified verdict. After the long-awaited decision, if you're waiting in a courtroom, in Italy at least, it takes a century. Can take even 30 years to get a verdict. It's ridiculous how stupidly slow law is here, Which needs this verdict. It's the coagulation of the decision, this earth here. And after this decision is done, it kills desire. It all creates the capacity to enjoy what it already has. Libra tends to not desire, but to solidify and absorb what it already has. By the way, this sign took me an eternity to formulate because it's Libra. And like it's the first one you're gonna see pretty images, So it has the significations. Now we go to history. History here is very fun. This is the late Middle Ages, If the early Middle Ages were all about preserving the idea of the Roman Empire, with the emergence of new forces, so the solidification of all those barbarians, the game changes. So there is the emergence of the Church and the Holy Roman Empire in the West via the marriage of the Frankish Empire, of the Germanic sword, the brute force, the violence, and the Church, which works as the legalistic, more moralistic aspect, in the Middle Ages, which realized both the barbarians and the church realized the convenience of such an alliance, which is gonna last 500 years, gonna last very long in true Libran fashion, in order to preserve their power. The Frankish Empire, which is not the strongest in military, of course, they were pretty good for the ages, but that's not its main strength, you know. This is the era of noble warfare and small militaries. It's very, very, very selective warfare. But in legitimacy, this empire was strong in legitimacy. This is the era of knights, poetry, and cavalry culture, you know, the noble. Charlemagne sent out the Missi Dominici, which are like, which has those pair of inspectors. They went always in pairs, because this is Libra, so it's two by two, to ensure that his law was applied equally. This is the birth. This is the period in which the birth of the common law that basically the justice must be balanced and standardized across the different tribes, you know. And it also establishes the scabini, which are permanent judges. So it sort of creates or recreates the professional legal class, which job is not to fight and generate evidence out of the nowhere, but to weight it. You know, Charlemagne actually was Aries himself. So it's like sort of submitting, you know, his violence to this more legalistic aspect of this period, you know. It was legalistic. You look up a fucking feudal contract, tell me it's not legalistic. It's very long. Another important empire I cannot not mention is the Abbasid Empire. So the Muslims took hold of the Middle East and they founded this empire by this war, the Aries, you know. And this empire tried to harmonize everything it could get an hold on. So Greek philosophy, Persian art, and like it balanced the relationship between the infidels, the dhimmi, the aliens, and the Muslims. The development of fiqh, which is jurisprudence in Arab, during this time was this Saturnian masterpiece of weight measures and social contracts, you know. This era I want to mention that sets up the foundation for the Scorpionic era, which is gonna be signified by the institution of banking. We'll get to that in the next video though, but you know, the Arabs there invented the sak, which is the check. So this is the ultimate Libra object. This is the piece of paper that guarantees a relationship of trust. So you don't need to forget to carry gold, which is the physical reality. You can carry a contract to get your thing, you know? And like if you get this security, this also the cult of legitimacy. Everything this era was based on legitimacy. Is going to set the groundwork for the Jews to make a lot of money in the next 400 centuries, you know, in the 300s, 400s, that period. Which is Scorpio, you know, the banker. We're not at banking yet. Now we are establishing relationships of trust. To the biblical section, today I'll talk to you about the great King Solomon. You already see there is Sol O Mon, which is sun and moon, marriage of sun and moon, feminine and masculine. Sun is masculine, moon is feminine. So it is signed as this thing. In marriages, feminine and masculine. It's a balance. Solomon is the king where Mars goes into exile. He does not win via this word. He wins via judicial sentence or marriages in this case, and a lot of them. His wisdom is the exaltation of Saturn. The ability to weigh two conflicting truths on a scale and find the golden mean. Wisdom is not some mystical intuition. It's the capacity to judge. So if we take our famous case, you know, it was two mothers and one baby. And like the thing was that like both mother claimed that the baby was theirs. And like it wanted to test which one actually cared about the baby, you know? So he did this thing. He used the psychological trap. He threatened to split the object, to separate the baby, to cut fucking the baby in half, to little slice him, in order to force the relationship, which is the mother's love for the baby, you know, to reveal itself. This sentence was called calculated and perfectly balanced, you know, as all things should be. It is the judge that realizes that the law is a scale, not a number. So you see, there's this humanitarian aspect of Venus. in Libra. And like in Libra, so what happened actually was that basically the actual mother said, no, no, I rather the other woman take it because I don't want the baby to be cut enough, you know. So he understood that the actual mother was that one that didn't want his baby to be cut and would rather relinquish it, you know, which is very genius of him, you know. By the way, Libra is the sign of wisdom. This is not intelligence, this is wisdom. It's very different type of aspect, you know. In Libra, the eye falls and the pair rises. So Solomon had 700 wives, which is the 7 of Libra, this is the 7th sign, and 300 concubines. So don't look this in a sense of like lunar or Cancerian aspect of family. This is not a big family. This is a cabinet of international treaties. You know, every wife was just a contract with a neighboring nation. He conquered his neighbors. He married them. So he replaced the Iron Siege with the Venusian wedding. So if Moses just invaded shit left and right and his descendant did that too, bro married everyone. He turned the potential enemies of the other into allies, with whom he shared a bed and a trade deal. Also, there's this incredible Talmudic legend. To cut stones for the temple, which is another thing that the desert second domicile does, is building something, you know. To cut the stones for the temple, which is solid earth, you know, stones, earth, the physical weight of that thing. That's Libra probably rules those type of minerals and gems, you know. Since so Mars was forbidden, you know, that it was forbidden to use iron tools. Solomon is said to have used the Shamir, which is a magical worm that could split stone with a glance or touch. So this is the ultimate symbolism. Energy Mars, this word is it's exiled, and it must not be seen or heard. You know how much some very pacifist women, some very elegant thinking women, or like even like people that really find themselves a bit like elegant and chic and that sort of stuff, really don't want to see anything violent. Like, so they really don't like to see any sort of weapon or sword, knives, you know. Sometimes that happens. I've seen that happen. This is the thing which the feminine exiles the masculine, does not even want to see it in its violent nature, at least. So the result is this work of Earth, of this Earth second domicile, that without the vulgar, you know, the sense really into being refined, is everything that's vulgar it does not want, the vulgar noise of physical labor, of conflict. By the way, this stone, which was considered a magical worm, was actually also like, the theory says that it's emery, which is like that stone that is very abrasive and can cut. Sorry, it's a mineral. Emery is a mineral that can cut stone. You know. Also, like it's applied, is used nowadays into water pressure lasers to cut stone. The thing that cuts stone the best in this world is a laser made of water with a emery finish, and you see the pressure of Saturn concentrating this water incredibly to cast this stone, you know. That's the symbology. So you see, this is the temple building, the Earth at the end of Libra. So if you also, like, I want to tell you this, if you ever dealt with Middle Easterners, you know how much they love negotiating when they are selling or buying. So much they created a type of shop and place, a type of shop, and which is also, by the way, a place of meeting. This is a place of socialization, of writing treaties, you know, stuff like that, called bazaar. The bazaar also has all sorts of stuff. It does not have one specific, not a shop of specificity. So in response to the Ariatical desert sun, Libra answers with loose clothing. So if you're in the desert, you don't want to die, but you need to cover yourself. There's this Saturn thing of covering yourself, you know. But it's all loose. It's very loose. It's Venus. It's a very, very particular relationship between Venus and Saturn, you know. Let's go to the significations. These significations are very feminine. You have uterus, female genitalia, abortion, the 70s. 70s was Pluto Libra. We have Roe versus Wade, at least in the United States, in the 1973. Because Aries says, I kill my children by sending them off to war, and Libra says, no, I just killed them in the womb. So there's this duality there. Treaties, truces, diplomacy. The Gaza truce this year was during Libra period. I don't remember the date exactly, but I remember it being Libra because I studied it. Law, rationality, Saturn here, if we want to be a bit more feminine, we could also name it Sophia, which in Greek means wisdom. It's this feminine awareness of stuff, it's not like the big daddy old, it's just very, very, very mature, It's also a feminine aspect, Saturn's very feminine. I just call it Saturn because that's the symbol, But in this case, it's more feminine, Only in Capricorn is actually Saturn, that big old grandpa, So like awareness of fears, this is the sign that's aware of fears, and the fears themselves, because fear limits you, is the Saturn itself. Whatever the Saturn you have in your Libra placements is the fear that you have, contained in the Libra, If you have something in Libra, there is the Saturn that you have, it's the fear that's expressed by the Libra. Beauty, this is the great sign of beauty. Beauty. Art, elegance, aristocracy, gentle speech, gentleness serves to disperse the tension as much as possible. So it's very good to not fight, supposedly, at least, I think. That's the theory. Glass, glass refracts the light. The light is the Aries, the sun. Glass refracts the air, like you get 7 colors, the 7 colors of Libra. All that glitters, the 70s, all about what glitters, the disco balls, the things which are shining. I don't have a shining type of clothing, but the 70s is Pluto Libra amazingness, because you have all the disco culture is all 70s, The disco culture is all Libra. Color, the colored TV screens of the 70s, because in the 60s we have not colored TV screens, but in the 70s we do. So there's the emergence of color from the Virgo grayness, Self-control, this sounds very controlled. Justice, caves, secluded spaces, holes, of course, which also I'm thinking of. Rainbows, don't forget Pink Floyd during the great 70s, We love the 70s here. Aliens, we love the 70s even more here. All the sorts of abduction stories. By the way, the UFO has this hole which abrupts you and like you are contained in. That's all Libra signification, And like the guy that fears it is some guy in like Mississippi with like 300 revolvers to defend himself in case aliens come down. That's your average Aries. I'm joking, they don't do that. They don't all do that, but it does that thing, it gets the signification of the alien. If Aries care about individual efficacy, Libra brings out the fear of being forced to be interacting with others, which is other humans, or well, the fear of reality itself, which is not you, everything which is not you, If I have to eat, the thing that I eat is not me. And I cannot fear that, So everything's seen as external in Libra and like needed to be integrated, absorbed. Absorbed comes from like the from Latin, it means to shallow, so it has the holy signification of your mouth, which is ruled by earth. In conclusion, to be aware of the other is to survive. Libra is a sign where survival no longer depends on force or control or matter, but the capacity to coexist and balance power. This sign understands that reality does not collapse because of chaos, but because of unresolved relationships. So, the 70s, you have all those legal battles for human rights, decolonization. You know how much decolonization happened though during the 70s, all this sort of human stuff of balancing the power, which you can see direct. When Pluto hits the sign, you see direct all the shit's very easy to see if you just check the Pluto. She's Exile here, by the way. But on the capacity to coexist, Its coldness, this sign is very cold. Don't get me wrong, this is colder than Virgo. Virgo is not this cold, even if it gets that saying. This coldness is not the absence of feelings, but the awareness, the capacity to suspend impulse long enough to observe, wait, and judge. And correct, This sign has been understood as submissive sign. This is the most rebellious sign. This is more rebellious than Aries, by the way, by far. So be fair to Libras and remember, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So see you next time, baby.